Now, on to the mushrooms. Lenticus idioides, that's how I say it. Shiitake, which is how most Americans say it. There is a TCM name. It's not huge in my old TCM herb books. In the newer books, of course. Medicinal mushrooms have exploded in the last 30 years. My books are 15 years old. Jiang Fu, it is fragrant. We'll talk about that in a minute. Or maybe not. It's at the bottom of this slide. Has an association with a specific tree. The tree is possibly related to oak trees. Tonophyce chi has a sulfur-containing compound, which is associated with its more, I think it's a little bit stronger than other mushrooms. I cut them up really fine when I'm cooking it. Higher temperatures can bring the flavors out, which is why maybe roasting them or giving a nice stir fry to your shiitake mushroom mix could be good. There is some characteristics, scales to the top here. The polysaccharides in shiitake, there are two. This slide deals with the most common one. You can buy active or activated hexose correlated compound. You can buy that independently because it might be made from other mushrooms. However, it was identified and made originally from Shiitake mycelia. So mycelia are associated with, say, the roots, but they're not the roots. Mycelia actually are the fungus. They are the glue. That is what they're talking about in that movie from a few years ago with the cartoons and the 3D, and I can see it right there. Oh well, as soon as I get off of this, where the trees talk to each other, because plants do talk to each other, and fungi and trees often have a symbiotic relationship. This is one such relationship. Shiitake was one of the first mushrooms that they learned how to cultivate it on logs. One report was from the early 1900s in Japan, so no wonder it's so popular as a food. You can grow them. That's another one that you might find as a kit. So active hexose correlated compound could be from shiitake, and it's not just the beta glucans. It does have some alpha glucans. Has been used as an adjunct in cancer. Shiitake alone was not as strong as maitake alone with the AHCC, or maitake and shiitake alone. And maitake's in these slides, a few slides down here. Lentinin, excuse me, which is probably not the best enunciation, although it's not necessarily Japanese. It is beta glucan, so it's probably pretty similar to other mushrooms. I want to bring out this phrase, biological response modifier. I was looking at some lists of biological response modifiers. There's a couple of articles I read specific to the fungi. My interpretation, you might look this up, they modify a biological response when chemotherapy is given, which chemotherapy we know can have some really negative complications here. So if you modify that chemotherapy, the organism, the human, the patient is going to do better. So specific to gastric cancer with this specific beta glucan from shiitake. Graphic here, a couple of things to point out and why I put this in here. I often like to think about a lot of these medicinal mushrooms, especially the early ones with immune activity, natural killer cells working on that tumor. You can interpret different things from this graphic. It's very similar to others, so there's a very similar one at the end with maitake. I wanted to bring this up about a shiitake dermatitis, historically seen in Asia, predominantly Japan, so there could be perhaps some ethnic sensitivity. However, it's been seen in Poland. I do believe the photograph of this patient was from that report. It's also been seen in England. This could also be the English patient. So it's been seen in the Caucasian populations a little bit more, thought to be due to the lentinin, really significantly associated with undercooking. So the Polish man said his partner had cooked the meal and he ate it. So a couple of days later, it will be a really irritating, really pruritic rash. And you could have some significant systemic signs like flu, almost like an autoimmune activation. And one patient was treated for several weeks with glucocorticoids to suppress the immune reaction. So always, always, always cook your mushrooms. Now we're switching gears. So we had shiitake, now we have maitake. So maitake has a ton of different common names. Hen of the woods is what we call it here in the Midwest. This is, so what is today, October something something. Hen of the woods should be abundant. It needs moisture, so if you've had a dry fall, so I will say you can see them as early as mid-August. And we could possibly see them till it gets too cold, possibly at the end of the month. Dancing mushrooms, because people dance when they see it because it tastes so good. Now, it does have these fronds, Grapholia frondosa. That's how I think about it, because I also think about the fronds, or what I like to think about from seaweeds, like little fingers, and they kind of can wiggle. The other thing is that this is a polypore, and the pores have the spores. And when I was holding one, I think this is on the next slide, the spores were bouncing off of us. It was really, really huge. I think this is a very nice mushroom. It's often compared to the TCM Zling, which is a very different one. So on the right is the Zling, on the left is maitake. So this is the mushroom that stimulated me to learn more about mushrooms. This huge one. It was too big to rip apart from the stump, and I think we carried it in 3 different parts. So it really did take 2 hands to hold it. So maitake diffraction has been used in cancer therapies. Polysaccharides, it's also known as Grapholia frondosa polysaccharides, but more known as maitake diffraction. Thought to be good ingestion, so eating it. Now that's, we're still on this, okay, what's the best way to take this? Injected is how a lot of the preclinical data was initially discussed. And that includes the shiitake preclinical data. So if we can eat maitake, that's really kind of cool. It's quite tasty. Well, it's not as strong as shiitake. You can cook it with butter and garlic and tamari sauce and cover it up, all that little spore quality. It also dries really well, and if you use some kind of saucy stuff, you can make maitake jerky, which is quite nice too. So this is a graphic very similar to the shiitake graphic about stimulating the immune system. Now maitake, most research is either animal or in vitro. So it's so difficult to say, well, do we have enough studies? We're still in preclinical evidence here. Now there is a little bit more preclinical evidence for other actions besides immune modulation. It could have alpha glucosidase inhibition. So this is an enzyme, the alpha glucosidase, which breaks down carbohydrates so that our gut can absorb it, and we get spikes in blood sugar. So this is a mechanism to control blood sugar. There are some pharmaceuticals that work like this. Berberine might also have this effect. So there is a preclinical study that has the polysaccharide from maitake, Grapholia frondosa, regulating blood sugar, controlling lipids, and helping with fat metabolism. So great thing to think about. Now this leads me into a study that's 2010, but crossing over outside of cancer, maitake mushroom in women with PCOS, helping ovulation. So this was a study where they compared maitake to Clomid, which is a medication that's been used to induce ovulation in PCOS and in other aspects of infertility. Oh goodness, now at least 30 years, probably more like 40 years. And they actually also, for women that failed Clomid, they did Clomid and Maitake together. The combo did better than Clomid when they had failed, so Maitake alone may also induce ovulation. This is a really great thing. This was only 18 milligrams of Maitake extract. So small study, just once, but consider it and consider Maitake in PCOS because of possible dysglycemia. Not all PCOS women have that, but just a little heads up that medicinal mushrooms can do more than just modulate the immune system and reduce malignancy. So that ends this section, and we will conclude. Thank you.